delighted to have our next speaker who's ready, sitting in the wings here, Ciara Conlon. Welcome, Ciara, and thank you for being with us today. Ciara is going to talk to us today about the future of work and just a bit of Ciara's background. She's an author and leadership expert with expertise in productivity and habit formation. I could certainly use some advice, Ciara. She's author of Rise Before Your Bull and Other Habits of Successful People. So Ciara will speak to us and then she's happy to take any questions you may have at the end. So please give a very warm welcome to Ciara Conlon.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's great to be in Belfast, and I want to just say thank you to Nespresso Professional who invited me here today. That's all the lovely coffee you've been drinking today. So, in 2012, I wrote my first book, Chaos to Control. And that book was 50,000 words long, and it took me 2 years to write. In 2014, I was approached by Wiley Publications to ask me to write Productivity for Dummies. But what I was advised was that that book would be 90,000 words, and I had 6 months to write it. Now, to add to this, I had just paid my fees for my master's. I was due to become president of Network Ireland, a networking organisation for women in business. And I'm the mother of 3 and a small business owner. So while it looked like the odds were against me to find the time to do that project, what I want to share with you today is how I did manage to write that book in 6 months, and also the techniques that I used, how you can use those same techniques in order to increase your own personal productivity, but also take them into the workplace. Take them into the workplace so that they can enable us to adapt to the rapid change that is happening. And it won't just enable you to adapt to the change, but it will also help us to increase performance, collaboration, productivity, and innovation. So what does that look like? So there were 3 things. The first thing is to wake up to the unconscious beliefs and behaviors that we all have. The second was then to put in place conscious habits that can really fuel success. And the third then was to bring those ideas into the workplace so that in the workplace we can create more positive habits and rituals around these things that can fuel our performance and increase innovation in our organizations. So first, let's go back to the book. So how did I manage? So the first thing was to look at the unconscious beliefs that I had. And there were 3 in particular that I knew were going to hold me back. Because if I was going to fit in this new project with all of my other responsibilities, something had to change. I wasn't going to manage to do it with the same habits that I'd always had. So the 3 things, the first one was that I didn't have time. Obviously, this is a belief that we all have. So the first thing that I did myself was I took out my calculator. And 90,000 words divided by 6, and yes, I did need a calculator to do it, okay, was 15,000 words. So I knew I needed to do 15,000 words a month. That was a little less than 4,000 a week. Now that looked more manageable to me. So then, knowing what I wanted to achieve, I then had to figure out when I was going to do it. But I was fortunate in the fact that I had a very clear goal. So that clear goal obviously was to write this book of 90,000 words. But before I signed the contracts, I had to create a table of contents for this book. And that table of contents helped me to break down that big goal into more manageable parts. So I then scheduled into my calendar each chapter and when it was going to be completed. Because I had some interim deadlines which helped me to know that I had to do X number of chapters for each deadline. Now, I wasn't always perfect and I didn't always get them all done, but at least I knew what I needed to catch up on the next week or the next month. So starting off with any goal, obviously, you have to have a very clear picture of it, breaking it down into the smaller parts, and then prioritizing it by scheduling it into the calendar. Now, a lot of people can be very clear about big project plans and we break them down, but what they sometimes fail to do is look at what that means for them personally and their own schedule and what they can fit in. So putting it in place like that helped me in many ways. It helped me to see that it was possible. It reduced my stress and anxiety around, could I actually do this? Because I could see it, yes, I could. So I also obviously had to schedule in my college work in my calendar as well. But with a lot of things going on in my life, there was another thing I had to look at, and that was, could I do everything? The thing is, we know we can do anything in this life, or we can do anything we want, but we can't do everything at once. So Steve Jobs said it. He said, focusing is about saying no. So I mentioned to you earlier, I was due to be president of Network Ireland, so I had to step down from that. I had to step away from that to focus on what my priorities were. And these two things, my studies and the book, were my priorities for those 6 months. So those little habits that I created enabled me to be able to fit these things into my schedule. But there were other things that were holding me back. Another belief that I had was I'm not a morning person. Now, some people will say, if you're not a morning person, well, then you're probably a night owl. But for me, I was neither. So somehow I had to find more hours in the day. So I had to break this belief that I had that I wasn't a morning person. And the way that I did that was through the title of my book that I was introduced with, Rise Before Your Bull. So when I recognized that what was stopping me from getting up in the morning was the bullshit in my head that told me that I was too tired, that I had too much to do today, that I didn't really need to get up. And you see, this bull, we carry around with us all the time. And this bull limits us from our potential. So it's not just the bull that comes in the morning when you're too tired and you want to turn over, but this bull carries on all day. It's the inner critic, that voice that tells you that you're not good enough, or that you don't have the time, or that you don't have the resources to do the job that you want to do. So rising before my bull enabled me to create this morning routine. And why did I want that morning routine? I wanted a morning routine because I wanted to fit in the things I couldn't fit in at other times of the day. And that included meditation. Because for me, meditation helps me to focus. It helps me to feel in control. It helps me to feel present and grounded in my day. But then it also enabled the third thing for me that I wanted. And the third belief that I had was that I didn't have time to exercise. And I'm sure lots of us have that belief. We're too busy or too tired to exercise. But what I found was from waking up early, from meditating once I got up, that it energized me and made the space for me then to add in a 20-minute exercise routine in the morning. Because you see, all these habits helped in order to make me more productive. We know that exercise fuels energy and gives us more focus and enables all those other great things that we need to achieve in our daily work. So bringing those habits in were really important. Now, what other habits do we see in the workplace, or what other unconscious beliefs do we all have? Things like, if I open my email first thing, I'll feel more in control, which we know is a belief we shouldn't have. If I answer some emails while I'm in a meeting, I'll get more done and feel more in control. Another belief which we need to get rid of. Or what about the one where I don't have time to take breaks? So there are lots of these beliefs that we carry around with us each day that don't serve us, that don't help us to be productive and reach the performance that we could reach. So taking a look, first of all, at these unconscious beliefs, because your beliefs inform your behavior. What you believe is what you will act out each day. And your daily habits determine how successful you're going to be. If you think of what your daily habits are now, are they habits you're proud of? Habits that you know are going to help you to reach all the goals that you want to reach? Or could they be a little bit better? So looking at those habits, when you go away from here, taking stock of what are you doing personally and what's your team doing together, could we change those beliefs? Could we change our behaviors and make them more positive? Because the habits that we've had up to now aren't going to enable us to get to the future place we want to be. The habits that you had in 1992 are definitely not the habits we need now in 2019, moving into 2020. Because these are not the ones that are going to enable us to adapt to all this change, to be able to enable the creativity and innovation that we need. So looking at all of this, what we want to look at is what conscious habits do we want to install? But what is habit anyway? Habit is the behaviors we enact every day. It's the things that we do every day, most of it unconscious. Researchers in MIT figured out that habit was controlled by one of the most primitive parts of the brain, namely the basal ganglia. And they discovered this from rats who had a damaged basal ganglia. And these rats with the damaged basal ganglia couldn't remember simple routines or remember how to get through a maze that they always knew how to. So they discovered that this primitive part of the brain helps us to program habits that we can use to our benefit. But as we all know, sometimes that programming isn't the right programming. The sitting in front of the Netflix and drinking beer and eating pizzas. That programming isn't the programming that's going to get us our goals. So what we want to do is program our brains with the right type of habits that's going to help us to reach our goals. And the thing about the brain is a lot of research in neuroplasticity has discovered that the brain isn't a static mass of cells. The brain is a neural network that's constantly evolving. We have the ability to learn and grow our brain at any age or stage of our life. And you may have heard that these neurons, when they wire together, they fire together, they wire together. So as we repeat an action, these neurons keep on firing together and it strengthens those neural networks. This is why when we repeat an action, when we keep repeatedly going to the gym, it gets easier. And we want it to get to a stage that it gets so easy we don't have to think about it. So by doing this, we can start to create these habits that are going to enable us. So our personal habits like exercise and meditation can help us in our performance at work. Our work habits like scheduling and planning that will enable our own productivity. So all of these habits we want to consciously create and weed out the unuseful ones. From my experience as a leadership coach, the high performers have 3 different areas of habits that they are really good at. And they include productivity, energy, and presence. So they all have productivity habits like I mentioned. They all look after their schedule very well and protect their time. They all start their day with their calendar and not their email. They all have exercise habits that help them to de-stress and energize them. And they all have some kind of presence habit. And what I mean by that is they're more mindful in the workplace. They're mindful, they're able to focus on the task at hand. They're not chaotic, jumping from one task to the next. And by being mindful, this also encourages better relationships at work. Moving that now into creating more rituals for the workplace. So habits are things that we do almost unconsciously. Rituals are things that we create very consciously. And we do them for a purpose greater than themselves. So what I mean by that is you've heard in some organizations when there's a sale, a bell will be rang. That's a ritual. It's a ritual for motivation, to encourage people to be more engaged in the workplace and in the tasks that they're doing. We're all very familiar with the haka, the New Zealand rugby team ritual, that's performed as a sense of identity and belonging. It also helps to raise their energy and scare the shit out of their opponents. What about Rafael Nadal, the tennis player? Anybody watch tennis will see every time he goes to serve, he has little quirks that he does that helps him to remain focused. What those rituals do is to quieten the mind so that he's not stressed out about the match that he's about to play. So these rituals can have a really powerful effect, and we see them in sport all the time. But more and more workplaces are starting to embrace the power of ritual. Rituals for different purposes. What ritual can do, it can embed the values of your organization. So the values that you're trying to create, when we create a ritual around them, this can help the organization to really feel the culture it's trying to create. So I'm going to give you 3 examples of how you could maybe bring ritual into the workplace. The first is in the area of focus. So a very simple ritual that some organizations do is to have an airplane mode afternoon. So we disconnect, we unplug from the email, from the phones, from everything that can distract, so that you can do really deep work. And that is essential. It's something we very often forget about and we don't take seriously, is that human beings cannot do their best work if we're in a crowded workplace. While a crowded workplace can be good for collaboration and creativity, if we need to do really focused work, it needs to be in quiet time. So you may say that's not possible in your team or your organization, but play with the idea. Could half the team be disconnected while the other half connected? Or could some people do it on some days and others other days? But there needs to be some ritual in order to help the team and each individual focus and do their best work. Rituals around collaboration. There are many team rituals you've all heard of, but a very simple ritual that really works, and that's the ritual of the coffee break. So the coffee break enables people to come together. And more important now in the world of the virtual workplace, when we do come together, it's important to be able to have that time together to fuel this idea making and creativity. And having a good quality coffee in the workplace enables people to do this so that they don't have to leave the workplace. It also, taking a break, fuels productivity in itself. This unconscious belief that we have to keep working and not take breaks. Breaks are the most powerful way to stay energized during the day, to remain focused and to be productive. The third area where rituals can really help is in the area of innovation. Have you ever been to a failure party? Well, more and more organizations are starting to embrace this idea. We all know now that for creativity and a culture of innovation to be part of your organization, we have to embrace failure. So lots of organizations are starting to have these failure parties. When something goes wrong, let's celebrate. Because if nothing's going wrong, if we're not failing, we're not trying new ideas. We're not trying something new. So it can be a powerful way to send a message to your people that to try is okay and to fail even better, because the more times we fail, the closer we're going to get to success. So for you, walking away, what do you want to walk away with today? Think about what unconscious beliefs and behaviors you have yourself that are limiting your potential, and that are in your workplace and in your teams that are preventing the potential of what your organization is capable of. Because when we become more aware, it helps us make better choices, and those better choices are going to give us better results. In place of these habits that we want to weed out, we want to embed more positive personal habits for ourselves and more positive rituals for our organisation. And when we do this, we'll make space for the future that's ahead of us. Thank you very much.